All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. The heyday of the rivalry between the Tennessee Volunteers and Florida Gators came in the 1990s as the Gators' domination of the SEC East was basically all that prevented Tennessee from reaching the SEC championship game until they were finally able to break through in 1997. Now, from 2001 to 2004, the Volunteers took 3 out of 4 from the Gators, but since then, it's been all Florida. As coming into Saturday night's contest in Gainesville, the Gators were 16-2 in their previous 18 meetings with the Vols, which included them not losing to the Volunteers in the swamp since 2013. Now, Tennessee went to the swamp this past Saturday night with plenty of momentum. You're talking about a squad that won 11 games last year. They really had a coming out party for the entire 2022 season, if you will, under head coach Josh Heupel. They began this year ranked 12th in the AP poll, and they were taking on a Florida team that a lot of people really didn't know about. And I say that because, Florida began this season, they went out to Utah. They had a very tough outing there, but honestly, going out to Rice Eccles is not easy for anybody. That's a very difficult place to play. Florida got back on track at home with McNeese State, but you really still didn't know what to expect from the Gators. And then, for quarterback Joe Milton III for Tennessee, he would go out there and connect with Ramel Keaton early on a touchdown throw in the first quarter to give the Volunteers the 7-0 advantage. And of course, if you're in Rocky Top, you definitely have to feel good about that. But from there, the Gators would reel off 26 consecutive points as Tennessee's defense never had an answer for Florida's offense, while the Gators' defense just kept Milton and the Volunteers' offense off of their toes for the bulk of this contest. And when it was all said and done, Tennessee left Florida on the wrong side of the 29-16 score. Now, first things first, winning conference games is not easy regardless of what league that you're in. And you talk about night games. Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, the swamp, is a very difficult place to play. The crowd is into it. The place is rocking. The first conference game of the year. All of those things factor in. But you're going to look at Tennessee. 10 penalties on the contest compared to 5 for Florida. Then on top of that, I talked about Tennessee's defense. They weren't able to get Florida off the field. Florida was 7 of 14 on third down. And then the other big thing for me was Florida's ability to run the football. The Gators had 183 yards on the ground. 172 of those came from Trevor Etienne. Then on top of that, we saw quarterback Graham Mertz be very efficient in the first half for Florida, 19 of 24 passing for a buck 66. We saw him with the injury, and late in the second half, all Florida was doing was running the football, and Tennessee still couldn't stop it. The bottom line is this game was won in the trenches because you look at it, Florida's defensive line was able to put the pressure on Milton, and then their offensive line really dictated things that allowed the Gators to control the pace, win the time of possession, which is always a big thing. Florida had the football on Saturday night for nearly 37 and a half minutes. I don't care how good your offense is. It's very difficult to go out there and win when you're only going to possess the ball for about 22 minutes. And in that case, you're taking on a very fresh defense at that point. Now, of course, there's going to be questions at the end of the game because this was a solid game that unfortunately is going to be marred by the end. I'm talking about the scenario where obviously, there were only precious seconds left on the clock. The Gators were clearly just kneeling on the ball and looking to get out of town. And then we saw the late hit on Graham Mertz. This was after Tennessee head coach Josh Heupel called the timeout. This led to a fight between both of the teams, and subsequently, now Florida's going to have 3 guys suspended for the first half of their next game, while Tennessee is going to have one. And all of this could have been avoided, in my opinion, if Josh Heupel had just called it a day, because at that point I could understand it if you're down by a possession or less with 7 seconds left, you're trying to call that timeout. I totally get it. But at that point, you're down two possessions. What are you going to do in 7 seconds to try to get two possessions and try to win the game? You're not going to do anything. Just cut your losses and go away. But nonetheless, Tennessee's got to get back to the drawing board. They've got to shake this one off, because at the end of the day, there's still plenty of football left in front of them. And more importantly, there's still plenty of football left for them in the SEC. They got UTSA at home this Saturday, and they got a couple of home games coming up. They host South Carolina at the end of the month, and then they're off for a week before they host an improved Texas A&M team. But then you look at their road games at Alabama on the third Saturday of October, and of course, like I talked about it in the preseason, the Tide are going to look to get back on the good foot, if you will, in that game, because they dominated this rivalry for so long. And then, of course, they went to Knoxville last year, and Tennessee beat them for the first time in a month of Sundays. Then after that, they're at Kentucky, and then, of course, you look at later in their frame, and coming up in the month of November, they're at Missouri, and then they host Georgia in back-to-back weeks. So if you're Tennessee, you got to find a way to shake it off. Obviously, they got to get back to playing better defense, be a little bit more cohesive in their running game. But then again, they faced a very good Gators team. And I'll tell you like this: Florida, they're going to fly under the radar this year. They're going to have their ups and downs. But for me, I think people, meaning the fans of the Gators, need to practice patience with Billy Napier. Of course, last year, it was they were 6-7 in his first year at Florida. It's a rebuilding process. It's a transition process when you go from one head coach to another. But I think Billy Napier is going to give them some stability as long as the people there are patient. And I think winning against Tennessee is always a step in the right direction. You remember last year for Napier, he lost to Tennessee, he lost to Georgia, and then he also lost to Florida State. Three teams that the folks in Gainesville don't want to see their beloved Gators lose to. So he's off to a good start here in 2023. He's been recruiting solid. Obviously, right now, Georgia and the Alabamas of the world in the SEC, if you will, and if you throw LSU into that mix, they're the gold standard for recruiting. But the folks in Florida want to see this Gator team get back to what they were. Remember, three national championships, one in the 90s under Steve Spurrier, and then, of course, two more in the 2000s under Urban Meyer. They want to get back to that. Florida likes where their facilities are headed. And at the end of the day, Gainesville is a good college atmosphere. So let's see if the Gators can build off of this heading into the rest of the season and try to make some hay in the ultra tough SEC. But one thing is for sure, Tennessee definitely got more than they bargained for this past Saturday night in the swamp. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.